Okay, so we're going to have a conversation, and what would be cool is if, while we're having a conversation, think about some questions that you want to ask Marcin. There are a lot of issues to do with venture capital that are important for companies and startups that don't get teased out a lot of the time in public. So it's great to have a kind of an educational session here. But first of all, Marcin, tell me about your background. How did you get into VC?
To be honest, my background is purely kind of financial.
Well, I think there might be a problem with your mic. Is it on?
Can you hear me?
We might have to change the mic.
I'll just check it quickly. Yeah, it's good.
Is it? Oh,
yeah.
It's working.
Okay, great.
So by background, I'm a boring financial person, to be honest. You know, I started in investment banking. I was in mid '90s, in early '90s. I was working in two investment banks, Paribas Capital Markets Group and Banexi. Then in '94, I went into fund management. I was working for Soros Fund Management for 5 years. And really interesting stuff started in '99. So after the Russian crisis, Soros decided to pull out from the region. And this is when I joined Intel Capital. So I've been managing Intel Capital in the region for 11 years. I started in Warsaw. Over time, I was growing with our operations in the region. So in 2002, I opened the office in Moscow, in 2005 in Bucharest. And starting this year, I'm also managing our operations in Middle East and Africa.
I see. And so you've been with Intel Intel Capital about 11 years. And by the way, everybody, I don't know if you're tweeting now, I'm sorry, I can't, my Turkish is not great on Twitter, but I'm going to watch the hashtag, and if you have a question you don't want to ask yourself, you can ask it and I'll read the stream. And I can ask it if you like. Or in those of you who are watching on the live stream, if you're watching, you can tweet me at Mike Butcher, or if you use the hashtag and you tweet in English, I'll try and put your question to Marcin. But one of the things that's going on at the VC world right now is a lot of concern about whether or not venture capital has a sort of a future role going forward, because now you can build a startup for 50,000 euros, you can get a product out there. I mean, so you don't need the large amounts of cash that was previously required, say, in the 90s. What's your view about that? Because there's also this rise of angels as well. Yeah. So what's your sort of view about that issue?
So, I think that probably venture capital is having well-functioning venture capital segment is an imperative for any country to be successful in creation of well-developed technology segment. Actually, if you take a look at, any country on the planet, venture capital is an imperative. It's not possible to build significant technology, new economy segment in any country without well-functioning venture capital industry. If you take a look at, which countries are leading in new technologies, in technology successes, you will see that those are the same countries that have well-developed venture capital industry. There is close correlation between having well-functioning venture funding and technological success. So, look at countries like Israel, like United States, like United Kingdom. Those are the countries that were able to create their technology segments because, not with help, but because of existence of venture capital industry. Why is that? You know, actually venture capital industry is the only relevant source of funding for early stage risky technology ventures. I think that, you know, banks are not relevant at all. Risk profile of banks is making bank funding not relevant for technology startups. I think that, you know, angels are, you know, I believe play a very important role, but in the ecosystem, but you know, without venture capital, the ecosystem, the companies would not be able to make next steps. So I see it kind of, you know, as the process of recycling of capital. So it starts at the startup level. With growth, startups get first angel funding, then venture capital funding, then private equity funding. Finally, they get acquired or go public. And what happens? You know, after successful exit, you know, each startup creates a number of millionaires. This is the assumption. And those people those people typically come back to the beginning of this cycle. Either they establish new businesses, or they become angels, or they become investors. And what we see in all the countries that are successful in development of technology space, you see that this recycling of capital is working. So once it started, once this chain reaction was initiated, it sustains itself. And it's kind of growing. It's kind of, you know, making bigger and bigger circles. And it is extremely powerful. So basically, you know, if you take a look, take a look at processes that are taking place in global economy. You know, I would say that what is, you know, very important is if you take a look at US economy, only around 15% of totally employed people works in manufacturing. Manufacturing only a short while ago was the main employer in mature markets, in developed economies. It's no longer the case. What we see is that actually manufacturing segment is following the same trends that happened in agriculture kind of 40, 30 years ago. So we can expect that probably in another 20 years, manufacturing will employ like 3 to 5% of the people of totally employed, the same percentage as agriculture. And what is growing? What is making the country powerful? Intellectual potential. Intellectual potential is the true oil of the 21st century. It's not raw materials, but actually intellectual potential is determining the wealth of the country and importance of the country globally. And venture capital is the category of investors that is supporting, you know, innovations.
Okay, let's talk about then where do you think Turkey is right now in terms of the VC cycle. There was a conference here a few months ago called the Newbridge Venture Summit, and a number of venture capitalists were there. They were coming in from all across Europe, and the people that I spoke to, because I went to that, and the people I spoke to, that was in Istanbul, people I spoke to seemed to think that Turkey was kind of getting to the point where some real big VCs were going to start swooping into the market. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Where is venture capital going to sit into Turkey's economy soon?
You know, I think that Turkey has most of the necessary ingredients to be successful, to build successful technology segment, you know, in place. You know, Turkey has tremendous entrepreneurial spirit. We see a lot of, you know, startups, a lot of startup activity in the country. Large domestic market. I think there is willingness in the country to use technologies. So consumption of technologies has been growing really very rapidly. You know, it is actually very good environment for creating you know, innovative technologies and successful companies. I would say that now the question is, what's gonna happen next? What I've been observing so far is that most of investments going into Turkey has been going into companies focusing on domestic consumption, on kind of, you know, satisfying domestic consumption. which is good. I think that this is natural next step. But it's important to make the next step. It's important to think, you know, how Turkey can become the source of innovations. Not only to sustain its own consumption, but the source of innovation that can be applied globally. And you know, I think that I think the country has tremendous chance here. I think that venture capital, with its knowledge, with its expertise in growing such companies and help them expand in international expansion, can be extremely helpful. This is, by the way, the part where angel funding or you know, or corporate funding is not gonna be that helpful. But you know, but I think that this is the opportunity that has not been utilized yet, and probably the next couple of years will show whether the country can be successful here, as you know, countries I mentioned were, like Israel, Finland, UK.
Yeah.
Not even mentioning US.
Let's not talk about the US. I'd like to now let's take it one step back. Okay, how does that all work? Let's do a little sort of scenario. I'm an entrepreneur. Hello, can I come and talk to you, VC? Does it work like that? Do I knock on your door? How do you actually meet startups and find them? Can they email you cold? Can they call you? Does it work like that, or does it work more like through your network or something?
Yeah, I think that you know, I think that you know, deal flow is coming from all possible directions. You know, on the one hand, we are trying to proactively talk to companies that we see are relevant or successful. On the other hand, you know, we always respond to emails, we always respond to phone calls. So I think that, you know, entrepreneurs should not be ashamed of, you know, picking up their phone and calling us or sending us email. You know, this is our job to respond. This is our job to provide with some, you know, comments, some even if we are not able to invest. So globally, you know, we are receiving 20,000 investment proposals every year. You know, on average, we are investing in 200 companies. So not every contact will end up with investment, but you can. But actually, we value having a dialogue. We value exchanging thoughts, even if it doesn't end up with investment.
Now that's a refreshing attitude. But a lot of VCs I talk to say that they use their network more than cold calls and cold emails. Is a recommendation often more powerful? Is that not right?
You know, I would say that Turkey, you know, what we see, I think that what you said is absolutely valid for mature markets.
Right.
Because what we see in mature markets, in countries like US, like Western Europe, is that, you know, in those countries there is very well developed, we have very well developed intermediaries, investment bankers, consultants, corporate finance houses, yeah, who actually prepare beautifully, you know, looking business plans, and they contact, you know, all the VCs around. So basically the VC, when you know, VC coming to the office in the morning typically has a couple of new fresh business plans waiting on the desk, prepared, you know, according to high standards by pretty much the same good quality consultants. But at the same time, they know that the same business plan, you know, is on the desk of all their competitors. So actually, and if company is talking to 20 VCs, you know, I think that, you know, the typical thinking is, okay, you know, it's going to be too expensive for me. I shouldn't even read it.
Expensive in the sense that you're going to be competing against
exactly.
other VCs.
It will be technically an auction.
The price of the company goes up.
It will be technically an auction process. And actually what you see is that the top quality VCs don't, by definition, do not read it. By definition, they do not participate in auction process. Because, like, you know, investing in a company is not like buying a carpet. So you know, if sometimes the best quality VCs, they by definition reject the idea of participating in an auction process. So that's why they try to build their own pipeline through their relationships, through their proprietary network. So they would like to make sure that they have exclusive discussions with the company, and the company is not talking to anyone else. And
do you operate like that?
So I think that this part of the world is very different, because intermediaries are not even close in terms of development to where they are in Western Europe or US. So intermediaries are still, still significant percentage of deal flow is never reaching intermediaries. And it's still possible to have, it's still necessary for VCs to be successful to talk directly to companies and to receive cold calls and to open doors every time someone is knocking. But I think that one idea that I would share with you, if you are entrepreneurs, is I would say that sometimes, if you are, one very important thing for you is to understand that the quality of the partner you're going to choose is going to determine your future, and not every VC is going to be good for you. And quite often, or quite typically, the VC that is offering the highest price is not necessarily the best for you. So I would really encourage you to do your own homework. To the same extent as investment funds are analyzing potential investment opportunities, I think you as entrepreneurs should do your homework and analyze investment funds. You should check their profiles. You should check, how their previous investments went. Were they successful in your space? Do they have the right expertise? And you should talk, I think it's much, much better to talk to 2 funds that are relevant rather than to send your business plan to 20 funds. Because if you do it, probably nobody will read it. If you talk, if you have, more concentrated discussion with 2-3 funds, it's much more likely to lead to the right to the right conclusion. And if you choose the ones that are relevant from perspective of their expertise, their knowledge, their experience, you're much more likely to have successful investment and, more importantly, successful exit a couple of years later.
That sounds like very good advice. So in other words, do due diligence, the same kind of due diligence that a VC does on an entrepreneur or a startup. They should do the same thing on the VC.
Absolutely.
But the reality is it not the case that VCs don't invest in companies that are not getting really good revenues? I mean, you would typically look at companies that they need to be having, a turnover, a certain amount of turnover a month, right? But possibly €1 million in a month turnover, or you would not really look at a company at your level. Intel Capital doesn't really look at companies that don't have any revenue stream yet, right?
Actually we do. We do invest in companies at pre-revenue stage, and my background is I spent most of my professional career in Central Eastern Europe, and actually at Intel Capital we invested in companies that were operating from an apartment, and having no revenue, and actually, they were typically able to grow. So, maybe one example, I could give many examples. One example I could give, because it's also a successful exit, is our investment in Czech Republic, Centrum. The company, at the time we invested in them, there were 2 guys operating from their apartment. We invested in the company, pre-money value, it was technically a startup investment. We invested around $700,000 at pre-money valuation of $1.5 million. After a couple of years, the company was acquired for 120 million euro by one of the large private equity guys. So we are stage agnostic. I think that typically funds are investing in certain stage of development. In our case, we are stage agnostic. We can invest in very small companies, we can invest in very large companies, but the truth is that most of our investments is happening at expansion stage, where company is having already some sort of market traction, some sort of revenue. This is true.
And when an investment takes place, do you typically work with angel investors or other VCs, or how does it work? Do you invest alone? Do you take a lead on an investment?
Yeah, we are very flexible. I think that we can invest alone, and we do it quite frequently. Still, majority of what we do is co-investments. So we co-invest with other funds. We often invest in companies where there's already an angel inside. Our philosophy is to take minority positions. So we typically invest, we typically buy 15 to 25% stake. So we are becoming basically a partner in the business. We are not controlling the business in any way. We are just, a partner in the business, and our objective is to provide the company with as much support as we can in order to facilitate growth. But, we also see that other investors can also support the company. In my personal opinion is that it's damn responsibility of every shareholder in a non-public company to support its growth. So frankly speaking, I completely do not accept and do not understand the model of kind of purely financial investors. People who invest money and then basically, meet the management every month and are asking, what was the revenue and why wasn't that higher? I think that it is actually responsibility of every investor in a private company to support it. To think about ways to facilitate growth of the company, to help the company in entering new markets, in helping introductions to new partners, new customers. And what we found out is that actually there is a group of high quality venture funds, venture capital funds, private equity funds, and angels that are able to add significant value that we tend to work on multiple consequent opportunities.
When did Intel Capital decide to first enter the Turkish market?
I think that we've been
or has
looking.
Are you just visiting?
No. We are committed to Turkey. We have not completed an investment in Turkey yet. But we are committed to the market. We see tremendous opportunity in Turkey, and we are confident that the country will do extremely well, and we are willing to contribute to that. Investment process always takes time. I think that we have made up our mind a couple of years ago that we would like to do investments in Turkey. We've been looking at the market. We're doing our own internal analysis. I think that hopefully in the very near future you will see the first results of that effort. And by the way, I think that once we commit to the market, we stay. So if you take a look at history of Intel Capital, we are not tactical, we are strategic. So we make long-term commitments. So there is not. So if you take a look at our history, we were gradually expanding our presence. So far we have never limited that. So there's probably not a single country where we pulled out from. And we hope that once we start here, it will be just the beginning, and we will be expanding our operations and investing more and more. You
were saying that. You haven't made an investment yet, but obviously one of the interesting things about Turkey is the huge adoption of Facebook and other social platforms. Social gaming is quite clearly a big deal here, and you've also already done social gaming investments, haven't you? I was looking up earlier some of the companies that you've invested in, Intel Capital. Do you think it's likely that social gaming is going to be one of the areas that you're going to be most interested in?
Absolutely. I think that typically, the first areas that we are looking at are, they are around content, e-commerce, and infrastructure. And of course, I think that social content, social gaming are of course also important part of content. So yeah, clearly we are very interested in the segment, and as you mentioned, we have made multiple investments in the space globally, and we are definitely interested in the space in Turkey.
What's your view about mobile? Because there are a lot of mobile application developers out there who, working on apps. Say on the Android platform or the iPhone platform, do you think that, would you invest in a mobile app, for instance?
Sure. I think that, generally, you know, the difference between computing devices and mobile devices is disappearing. So what we see now is that pretty much every computing device communicates, and every communication device computes. So we will see numerous new form factors of various communication devices, but at the end of the day, those two markets will merge. It will ultimately be one market, and we are clearly also very active investor in mobile space. So, and by the way, what's interesting is that actually in terms of mobile applications, US is actually behind. So what we see is that actually emerging. Sorry.
In what way?
US, for example, has been generally in terms of mobile adoption. For example, some innovative business models like mobile payments, like mobile transactions. You know, US has been lagging behind. I think that still probably most mobile users in the US doesn't know what SMS is. So what we see is that actually in mobile space, quite a lot of innovations, quite a lot of new models is coming from emerging markets, not from countries like US.
Right.
That is clearly leading in consumer internet. So I think that there's clearly an opportunity here in the space.
So guys, it'd be great to hear from you if you guys have any questions about VC or investments or startups. And I can answer some too if you like. So who would like to ask a question? Put your hand up. We'll get a mic to you. Okay, well, we have a Twitter question. And the Twitter question is from Tonguchen. I'm not sure if he's here. I may be on the stream. Which is more important, the idea, the entrepreneur, or the business?
What is more important, the idea,
the entrepreneur, or the business? That's the question.
Business. You know, I would say that the most important element is entrepreneur, is the team. You know what?
The actual team behind the business.
The actual entrepreneur, the actual team behind the business. You know what's interesting is that actually, you know, I read some NVCA statistics that showed that around 70% of companies actually reaches exit based on products or services that were not around when they received original investment. So it's quite likely the business model will change over time. It's quite likely the company will need to adjust its products, adjust its technology.
The pivot.
And flexibility and competency of the team will determine whether the company will be able to compete long term. So from perspective of venture investors, I would say that, yeah, you know, I think that venture capital funds, they typically do very detailed due diligence of business and the numbers and technologies. But at the end of the day, to be honest, I think that most investment decisions are based on the quality of the team. I haven't heard of examples where funds were saying, okay, you know, the team is weak, but we will still invest. And this due diligence is probably the most difficult part of venture capital business. So that's why probably you will hear many venture capitalists actually talking about, you know, making investment decisions based on their gut feeling, rather than any analysis of the technology or the numbers or you know, or the business.
Because I guess it's really a lot of it's about people, basically, isn't it? Do you have confidence in the entrepreneur and the team to do something and then launch something, but then if they need to change, can they change quickly? Are they the right type of people to do that?
Absolutely. This business, probably more than any other business, is based on relationships. So I would say that one of the aspects you need to take a look at looking for investments is, you know, is there chemistry between you and your investor? You know, if there's no chemistry, if there's no, you know, good communications, good spirits, if you don't kind of use the same wavelength to communicate, you know, it's not gonna do well. So from this perspective, I would really compare venture investment to a marriage.
Like falling in love. But also, what about like when things get tough? In the last couple of years, we've seen companies have to do what they call down rounds to keep companies going. You know, you've already invested in a company, it's not doing so well. The entrepreneur has to lose some equity, lose a stake in the company. You know, that can happen as well, can't it? You know, you can have tough times with entrepreneurs and VCs.
That's true. I think that especially you know, during crisis, you know, it's necessary to help the companies. I think that, you know, you've seen that, you know, especially in around 2001 when the bubble burst, it was probably the most difficult time for the technology sector, and many of those companies actually did not make it. You know, in each case, you know, there is typically an effort going on to turn around the business. It's necessary to jointly think about you know, whether it's possible to turn around the business and what is necessary. Quite typically, venture investors are trying to support restructuring of the company through providing additional funds. But those are, yeah, if it's true, those are difficult moments. And, you know, unfortunately, not every technology startup is successful.
Right. Got some more questions coming in on Twitter now. @ Mike Butcher, if you want to ask a question. So one here from Stage Tiger, if you're around. How do you ensure a startup you have invested into spends wisely? Would you, for instance, should they, as soon as they get an investment, should they invest in a really nice office, a new car for the CEO, that kind of thing?
Yeah. So I think that this is very interesting question and very valid question.
But obviously, I mean, you get some extremes of people who go crazy, but there are other people who just kind of take the money but use it badly, I guess.
Yeah, I think that this is part of investing in the right team. So you know, I think that this money that venture investor is investing should be used to grow the business, to build the future, not to spend right away on nice cars or nice office or parties. So you know, you know, so basically, yeah, you know, I think that, you know, the entrepreneur is still managing the business. So if the entrepreneur can probably do it, but he will actually sacrifice his own future. So you know, so we are hoping that, you know, if we invest in the right team will not do it. You know, of course, there are some protections that typically investors are looking for, like, you know, for example, process of approving the business plan, you know, board structure, that it's quite typical that board is in dialogue with the company every time the company with the management would like to materially change the business plan. This should be discussed with the board, that typically also includes some independent directors. So there are some processes that are aimed at making sure that the funds are used to maximize the value of the business. But at the end of the day, you know, if you know, venture capital is always related to risk. And if the company, if the management decides to spend the money, you know, on things that are not relevant, you know, I think that everyone will lose, both investors and the founders.
Exactly, yeah. Okay, some more Twitter questions coming in. What do you think about the seed stage? This is a very good question, actually. So you have these days now you have kind of incubator-style accelerators. Like in the Europe, you have Seed Camp. In the UK, there's one called the Difference Engine. Denmark, you have Startup Boot Camp. There are various kind of seed stage entities now. In the US, the most famous ones are Y Combinator and Techstars. And so what's your view at Intel Capital about these kinds of entities? They typically accelerate companies very quickly. They take quite a lot of equity in the company, about almost 10%, maybe more even, for quite a small amount of money. But then they, I mean, do you take an interest in companies that have gone through that process?
Sure, absolutely. You know, I think that you know, this is an element of the, you know, this plays important role in the ecosystem. This helps, you know, startups to accelerate their growth. So definitely, you know, that's an important role. You know, one thing I can say that we do not invest in those entities, and the reason is that we always value direct relationship with companies that we invest into. So investing in an incubator, you know, would make us kind of, you know, would make our relationship with companies operating in the incubator kind of indirect. So we wouldn't have direct relationship. It would be kind of diluted through the incubator itself. So we are absolutely more than willing to look at companies going from incubators, but we would not invest directly into incubators.
Right, I see. So that, I hope that answers your question, wherever you are. How does it work in terms of time? I mean, if typically if you, and by the way, yeah, how long have we got? A couple of more minutes? A couple more minutes. How does it work in terms of time? Do you take, was it 3 months from meeting to term sheet, 6 months, a year? How long does it take to get investment?
You know, one thing that I would like to start with is that the length of the process really depends on both sides. So I think that it's not only controlled by investor. I think that it's also in hands of entrepreneur. So how quickly, you know, you go through due diligence process, it's really important. You know, it really depends on how quickly entrepreneur is able to answer questions, to provide satisfactory answers. You know, another element that really depends on both sides is negotiations process. So of course negotiations can take anywhere from 5 minutes to forever. But typically our investment takes from a couple of months to 6 months, the entire process. You know, we are able to do quick transactions, very quick.
A couple of months is pretty fast, actually.
Yeah, you know, I can give you, you know, some real life example of the deal that I did. It was AVG. AVG is now one of the leading global security software companies. They have over 100 million users globally. When we invested in them back in 2005, the company had a couple of million users, mostly in their home market. And real life example, we met the company for the first time on the 18th of May. It was a coffee meeting. We had kind of, you know, general chit chat about things. They said at the end of the meeting, they said, look, you know, we will be looking for some funding. We will send you some information shortly. Probably we received some information a week later at the end of May. Our investment committee, I took the project to our investment committee on the 20th of June. We signed the final agreement on the 20th of August. And it was the summer. So not everything was working at the same pace as it would normally. So if things go smoothly, it's absolutely realistic to close the deal within 3 months from initial contact. But of course, as mentioned, you know, there are elements that you know, not only investors control, like due diligence, like negotiations.
Okay, last question. I think, unless anybody else has got a burning question they want to. Oh, well, we'll go to you last. Just answer this one quickly. What's going to happen in terms of the future? I mean, where the kind of exit potential of a startup coming from Turkey, for instance? What's the exit potential to a media company, telecoms, expanding globally? What's the sort of general view?
You know, I think that...
or is there no general view? Does it just depend?
You know, I would say that there's probably no general view, I think, regarding exit potential. I think the market is evolving. I think that different exit models are working at different times. And what we see recently, for example, is that in 2010, we see a lot of exits happening through IPOs. But IPOs, but this is by far not a rule. So I think that there's no general good answer to this question.
There's a chap, go ahead. Can you say who you are, where you're from?
Yeah, my name is, my name is Atilla Büyükurvay from Dio Networks. I would like to ask something quite basic actually. When somebody contacts you for your VC, what do you expect them to be like? What do you expect them to have ready for you? Like, what impresses you about their idea? Like, do they have to prepare their studies beforehand? Like, they analyze the markets. What else do you expect for them to?
Okay, so do you want a full 600-page report on the market? What do you want? Do you want five slide decks?
I think 5-slide deck is absolutely enough, or a 3-pager. Basically, description.
So they have to cover off what team?
The company should be able to explain what they are doing, what they are planning to do, how much money they need, and how they are going to spend this money, and where is this money going to take them, and the team.
So yeah, business model, team, how much money they want.
And frankly speaking, I hate seeing kind of 600 pages documents. So I think that 5 slides or 3-pager is very good to start a dialogue, to start the discussion.
Good. Great. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much to Marcin for that.